The shuttle landed gently on the ground, its hard steel pressing against the soft blades of grass as it began offloading its troops. 2,000 Granti, ape-like creatures with muscular arms and thick legs, marched out in perfect formation. Each warrior was clad in traditional armor, their movements synchronized as they took their positions before their 14 commanding officers. This was merely one of many rituals of submission permitted by the Great Compact. Humanity, a newly discovered species, had been dismissed as a primitive, warring race, an inconsequential backwater by the standards of the Compact's empires and great nations. Thus, many sought to invoke the right of submission against them. The rules were simple. A controlled war would take place between two forces, each limited to 10,000 soldiers. The victor would claim the contested territory, while the loser would forfeit all claims and be forced to withdraw permanently. Should a defending force lose on its homeworld, it would be required to abandon all operations in the system. If they refused, the Compact would unite against them in a merciless assault, ensuring their complete annihilation. This system was designed to prevent mass genocide and reduce casualties, while still allowing for territorial disputes to be settled through warfare. To give native civilizations an advantage, battles were conducted on their home turf. The Granti were confident of an easy victory. They had deployed to a small island archipelago on the human world Tarth I-6, a planet covered in dense jungles, towering volcanoes, and thick brush. It was terrain well suited to them, mirroring their own homeworld. Even more reassuring was their technological edge. Plasma pistols and laser cannons vastly outmatched the humans' crude projectile weapons and primitive pulse rifles. After the troops disembarked, they stood at attention, checking their weapons. A bright red flare shot into the sky, the signal to begin the battle. The Granti general, standing tall, prepared to deliver his speech. A soft moan escaped his lips. Then, without warning, he collapsed, dead before he hit the ground. One soldier broke ranks and rushed to his fallen leader, only to recoil in horror. A small hole had been punched cleanly through the back of the general's head. The soldier's hands, now slick with green blood, trembled as he let out a panicked scream. They were under attack. Before he could react further, a sharp, wet squelch sounded nearby. His squad captain stiffened, blood spraying from his helmet as he crumpled to the ground. Chaos erupted. The Granti forces scattered for cover, weapons raised, scanning for their unseen assailants, but they saw nothing. Minutes passed. Silence reigned. No more deaths. No sign of the enemy. One officer dared to peek out from behind cover, only for a bullet to pierce his eye, dropping him instantly. Panic took hold. Soldiers opened fire blindly into the trees and mountain slopes, but their shots found no targets. 6 more Granti fell, each struck by a perfectly placed headshot. Their helmets, normally resilient against ballistic fire, offered no protection. The bullets tore through them effortlessly. As more officers tried to regain control, an order was given to advance into the trees and root out the hidden attackers. Yet the jungle yielded no sign of human presence, no footprints, no shell casings, no movement. It was as if the enemy had vanished. Meanwhile, 200 soldiers remained behind to secure their transports, 50 crafts hovering just above the ground, ready for retreat if necessary. But retreat meant admitting defeat, and defeat meant humiliation. A sudden, distant thud echoed across the battlefield. One transport exploded in a fiery inferno. The blast incinerated nearby troops, while the shockwave hurled others through the air. Moments later, another impact severed the engine of a second transport, sending it spiraling out of control, crashing into 2 more in its descent. Chaos spread as 2 more transports were struck, one of which landed directly atop an officer who had been desperately trying to rally his troops. Then came the mountain explosions. The units sent to secure the slopes found themselves caught in a relentless storm of detonations. Soldiers were flung into the air, limbs severed by shrapnel. The survivors blindly fired into the jungle, but their bullets met nothing but empty space. The situation was spiraling into catastrophe. Officers shouted orders in a desperate attempt to regroup, but the mountain unit was already decimated. Only 13 of the original 50 transports remained operational. An order to retreat was finally given. The transports lifted off, ascending into the sky, only for streaks of smoke to rise from the mountains below. Missiles, 5, then 8, then 10, each locked onto a transport, striking with pinpoint accuracy. The sky lit up with fiery blossoms as every last ship was obliterated. The Granti army was stranded. The remaining soldiers pressed forward, hoping to regroup and push toward victory. A contingent of 400 crossed a long bridge leading to the larger island. Just as they reached the middle, twin explosions rocked both ends of the structure. The bridge collapsed, plunging hundreds into the raging river below. The lucky ones drowned quickly. The others were crushed by falling debris. A remaining force of 300 ventured west, only to encounter a lone human armored vehicle, an ugly, boxy machine with primitive treads and a massive, rotating turret. The Granti hesitated. Then, without warning, the vehicle charged. Its turret spun, unleashing a torrent of bullets at an impossible rate. Thousands of rounds tore through the ranks in seconds. Plasma shots fired in retaliation were too slow. The vehicle's speed allowed it to evade effortlessly. The Granti's laser weapons reflected harmlessly off its polished armor. The battle lasted less than 2 minutes. The entire force was annihilated. By the time the final survivors regrouped, only 10 remained from the original 2,000. They stood in a field, weapons spent, gripping their blades in trembling hands. Desperate, they shouted challenges into the jungle, demanding their foes reveal themselves. A spray of blood. 9 dropped in an instant. The last soldier stood frozen, drenched in his comrade's blood, his mind unraveling from terror. He screamed for the humans to face him, to fight him like warriors. A rustling sound. Then 24 humans emerged from the trees. They were draped in camouflage, blending seamlessly with the jungle. Each one carried a powerful rifle. Before the Granti could react, a single shot rang out, shattering his kneecap. He collapsed, writhing in agony. A human soldier approached. He leveled his pistol at the defeated warrior's head and pulled the trigger. The battle was over. From orbit, the Granti fleet watched in horror as the entire operation unraveled. In a desperate retreat, they turned their ships away, only to realize too late that humanity had anticipated this as well. An array of limpet mines, each carrying kiloton-level nuclear warheads, had been deployed in their path. The mines magnetized to their hulls, detonating one after another. Before the last ship was obliterated, a message echoed across the open comms. Pity the fools who think fancy guns and big ships make them strong. Tell the galaxy what happened today. We'll be waiting. As the final explosion consumed the fleet, only one barely functioning frigate was spared. Humanity allowed it to escape. The reason? The galaxy would never know. What they didn't know was this: the Great Compact forbade any future rights of submission against humanity. Any empire that attempted vengeance vanished without a trace. Humanity had arrived, and they would leave no witnesses.